Welcome to the AI+HI project. I'm Nichol Bradford, SHRM's Executive in Residence for AI+HI. Thanks for joining us. Each week, we sit down with leaders from the worlds of business, tech, and HR to provide you with deep insights, actionable strategies, and practical advice for harnessing the transformative potential of AI. This week, we're exploring AI, learning, and culture. Our guest is Melissa Daimler, Chief Learning Officer at Udemy and a thought leader in learning, talent, and organizational culture. Melissa, welcome to the AI+HI project.
Thank you, Nicole. It's great to be here.
Melissa, your career includes impactful roles at Adobe, Twitter, and now Udemy. Can you share a bit about your journey and what inspired you to focus on the intersection of learning, culture, and organizational development?
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I have been in this business for over 25 years now. And I would say there are three main themes that have threaded throughout my career. One is just around systems thinking. So I've always been fascinated to look at organizations as an entire system. So, how do we think not just about our strategy and our purpose, but also our culture? And how do we use all of those pieces together as one system to help us be more successful as a business? I would say the next theme is really about building. I'm a builder. I've come into companies and have built learning and organizational development functions from the ground up. I have kind of evolved existing ones to think differently about how we can better serve the business and have rebuilt, kind of how we think differently about those core processes that I think we've continued to question throughout my career around performance, feedback, and even learning. And I would say the last theme is really about scale. How do we, again, not just take a look at processes and all the different elements of an organization, but as we continue to grow, as different technologies come into play, like AI, how do we think differently about how we're building different processes and practices in our organizations, and how do we scale that globally so that everybody has an opportunity to participate and build with us?
I love what you just said because one of the things you should know about SHRM is that we are doing a great deal of research on what are the determinants of success and failure in AI implementations. And, the one of the common threads is that the people, processes, and ways of working, i.e., culture, have a big impact on success. And so all of the three bullets that you just laid out align with what we see on the other side and what we see from our vantage point, which is across organizations, not just in the United States, but around the world. One of the things that I've heard you speak about before has been this idea of reculturing. And so I'd love to hear about how reculturing fits in with an organization starting to implement AI, starting to bring it into the organization. How does one reculture in the context of this new AI world that we're in?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. Well, stepping back, I think I'm super passionate about culture and do think that culture is also a system within a system. Culture to me is more of a verb than a noun. And so when I wrote the book Reculturing, it was important to kind of emphasize that even in the title. And I think of culture and reculturing as a set of not just values, but behaviors, processes, and practices. And these are all things that you need to continue to look at as you're building and evolving as an organization. I think if we take a step back and look at the enormous change that has kind of come at us with AI, that is also a system shift. I mean, I think of AI as not just upskilling and making sure that we can understand and learn the skills of prompt engineering in large language models. It's not only thinking about AI as technology, but it's also making sure that we as leaders are understanding how to help that change move through the organization effectively. So, how are we again looking at AI from a systems perspective? How are we thinking about bringing everybody along? How are we helping them get upskilled, but also understand the risks and the governance and all the different pieces that go into a large change like this? So I do think there are similarities in how I think about culture and systems thinking and what we're all experiencing and trying to lead through with regard to AI.
I want to jump to dig a little bit deeper into systems because you're right, there are so many pieces to effective change around AI, and some of the things that we've seen and I've seen is people might be piloting, but the governance doesn't have HR deeply integrated into it. It's just being done out of the IT department. Or like so we'll see organizations have pieces of the change, but not all of it. So as an advocate for a systems approach that connects the behaviors and processes and practices, what are the guiding principles that someone should follow? If I'm imagine I'm an HR leader and I'm just getting started, what are some of the processes and guidelines that I should follow?
I would say, I mean, first, as you pointed out, I think we get a little spoiled in the tech world in that, I've always had the freedom to innovate and experiment and, um, you know, think differently about how we work. As you pointed out, there are some companies around the globe who are a little more restricted, especially when it comes to AI. And so I think, first and foremost, really understand what are your constraints? What is the system in which you're working and can work? What are some of the legal issues that you have to be aware of? We have a governance committee at Udemy, and we meet weekly. It's a cross-functional committee. So to your point, Nicole, it's not just HR, it's legal, it's IT, it's engineering, it's product, it's finance, and we're all coming together to talk about, what are some of the constraints we should be aware of? What are some of the things that we're learning? What are some of the things that we're rolling out? We're rolling out an enterprise kind of chat GPT. And so how are we all thinking holistically about that? So I think first and foremost, really understanding what those constraints are in your organization is really important. One of the things that we did as an organization, especially being a learning company, we wanted to learn this together. And we have thousands. We're lucky. We get to use our own platform. We have thousands of courses. And so we picked a learning path that the entire organization went through together. And we incorporated ways to not just learn that asynchronously, but to talk about it as teams. So we had kind of team one pagers with questions on, what some of the things that you just learned. Talk about it as a team. Like we would come together and kind of share our best prompts, both from a work perspective, but also personally when we first getting to know some of the tools. We had one of our employees plan a three week trip to Europe last summer using ChatGPT, and we all helped her with it. So I think, learning AI, learning some of the skills that go along with it, but also making sure that as an organization, you're encouraging and even asking what kind of conversations you're having as a team. We have a saying here that we use a lot, which is, are you learning AI or are you practicing AI? And we like to highlight a lot of the ways we're practicing AI. How are we using it differently? in our workflows. And so we often kind of highlight some of the ways we've been using AI. Like, as an example, I remember the days when we had engagement surveys and the survey would close on Fridays. Our CEO would want to know the results immediately Monday. I would spend the entire day on Sunday kind of going through the thousands and thousands of comments. Now with AI, that process can take a couple of hours to kind of group everything together, really understand what those qualitative themes are, and have a really cohesive overview of what we're hearing from employees. So there's endless use cases out there in AI, how to use AI. And I think the more that you can not just learn about it, but also share how we're practicing and leveraging it, not only is a great learning opportunity in and of itself, but it also just helps, especially those non-technical folks, understand that this is really a set of tools that can help everybody be more effective.
So there's a couple of things that I love. One is that um, a learning organization is probably going to learn AI pretty good. So
Yeah.
that's great. I love that that you have this entire library and journey of things that other people have put on. So it makes total sense that you would use those, and I hope that that's available for everyone else too, in the way that you laid it out. Because of course you would, a as a platform that helps people learn, of course you
Mhm,
would know what a good journey would
mhm,
be. And then also what I've heard is that sort of like some of the 3 principles is that 1, know your constraints, and 2, have good governance and have it be multifunctional governance, and the 3rd, not just learn, but practice. So like a
mhm.
learning practice,
Yeah,
as you approach AI.
yeah, yeah. I would say the other piece, and I know you and I were going back and forth on this a little bit on email. The one of our values is courageously experimenting, and one of our behaviors is, continuing to iterate as we learn new things. And so courageously experimenting to us is, a lot around AI. And so the extent to which you can tie some of your own values and behaviors to kind of learning new technologies like AI, I think is, what I fondly call a twofer. You're not only kind of staying ahead of new technology, but you're again, exemplifying different ways of highlighting those values and behaviors within your own organization.
Mhm. And that sort of naturally leads us to a question around how AI itself will change learning and development. Like, how do you see the transformative potential of generative AI in workplace learning? And what's an example of where you've seen AI enhance the learning experience itself for high impact tasks?
I mean, I'm excited about all of the opportunities that are still coming fast with AI and learning, especially. I think, you know, um, I have been talking, I think, ever since I started a long time ago about the opportunity we have as learning leaders to contextualize and curate and really personalize content. It's not about more, it's about making sure that we help people learn at the right time within the right context. And so I think with AI, we now have the opportunity to do that much faster. And so, one of the things that we're doing quite a bit internally with our team is to create these chatbots with AI around some of our core skills that we're wanting all of our leaders to learn. And so, one of our core skills that we're learning is around coaching. And so we created a whole chatbot that is this personalized chatbot that you can interact with. That has we fed in a lot of the contextual information about Udemy, kind of our coaching framework. What are some of the things that we reinforce even within our own behaviors Again, all of those things that make it more relevant for Udemy employee. And then they have a much more personal experience in interacting with this chatbot after that information has been plugged in. So I think from a coaching perspective and a personalization perspective, there are just endless opportunities. But that's one key example that we've gotten a lot of great feedback on within our own kind of leadership learning experience.
So you're using the chatbot to coach employees. Is the chatbot also coaching employees to be better coaches for other employees?
Yes. Yeah.
So good.
I know, right? Where was that 10 years ago?
Yeah. So good. And one of the things, just picking up on the words that you're saying, it's very clear to me that Udemy has a growth culture.
Mhm.
And because there's things like you're learning together. Because one of the things that, I when I give my talks, especially, off the coast, when I'm talking to people in different parts of the country, it's stressing to them that no one knows. Like I tell them you're the ones because everybody's learning. So like everyone's learning. And so to have this learning culture and to have the learning culture, the listening culture, the experimentation culture that you described, like it's very clear to me that Udemy has a growth culture, and that appears to be growth cultures appear to be AI compatible cultures. That's what we're beginning to see in the scope and scale of the research that we've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, um, the there's so I mean, it's overwhelming, frankly. I mean, I think I love what you said that part of this, and this goes back to the change leadership piece, is how do you make it okay that wherever people are today, it's fine, but we're gonna bring you along. But it's really important that you continue to practice and learn. And I think one of the things I was just talking to our CEO about this that he's really keen on is how do we now look at AI, that word again, context. So how does he hold all of his team accountable? So our CFO, head of finance, our head of HR, to be thinking differently within their functions. So if we were to create, for example, a chatbot in HR, we're in open enrollment now for benefits. Wouldn't it be great if we could create a chatbot that answered all those basic benefits questions, that, you probably don't necessarily need a human for, but can be answered much quicker. So it's better for the benefits team, it's better for the employee. But we're talking now just about different ideas of within each function, what are some different tools that we could even create that would give us an opportunity to learn but also be an advantage to employees in rolling out. So that's kind of the next step when we're thinking about kind of leveraging AI technology. I mean, ultimately, what you're doing is, um, I also get the question of, is this going to, take away some of those core jobs or some of those? Is this going to make leadership less significant? And I actually think it amplifies the need for leadership because I think that, if you're doing AI right, you are, um, there's a reason Microsoft named its whole product Copilot. We're co-piloting. We're doing this together, and I think no matter what, the skills of curiosity, coaching, listening, empathy, connection, those are never going to go away. So how do we pair all of those good leadership skills with some of the great technology that's coming out and kind of continue to build an organizational system and culture that um, is a great place to work and we're all using much more strategic skills than we were able to
Sure.
before.
Absolutely. Well, so you mentioned culture, and we're talking about change management, and then, the elements that we're seeing that really seem to drive successful, AI adoption. I'm wondering if you could speak to, with a new technology like AI, and some of the conversations and curiosities that employees have about their jobs and what's happening. What would you recommend to an HR leader about, with intentional culture design, how they build a resilient, innovation friendly culture? Like, you guys are already a growth culture. And so, for someone who wants a resilient, innovative culture that is also a growth culture, what should they do? Where should they start?
I think first and foremost, I've always been a believer in, kind of walking your talk. So I think learning yourself as a leader, making sure that as you're talking about AI, you're also learning about it and practicing and sharing some of the things that you're discovering. And you're making it okay to kind of share not only what you're learning, but things that you didn't know you didn't know. So you're humanizing this whole kind of what could be an intimidating kind of shift in our entire workforce. So I think the more that leaders can talk about AI and how they themselves are using it, are practicing it, how they're thinking about it with regard to jobs, I think it's crucial. One of the things that we're starting to do more of is in our all company meetings, um, really again sharing stories of how we're using AI. Some things that we learned along the way, teams that have been innovative in thinking differently. So I think a big component of that is just to start talking more about it. Um, I also think, doing some kind of um, similar, it doesn't have to be asynchronous, but it could be a workshop on AI. But learning together in some way to understand kind of the core language. I didn't know what zero shot prompting was before we started learning more about AI. Um, so being able to learn together, however that looks, again, if it's asynchronous, if it's synchronous, um, but, coming together as a team and talking about what you're learning, I think is really key. So those are a couple of ways to start.
One of the things that I advise companies to do that are just getting started is, I tell them before they pick any platforms, they need at least 10 to 12 hours solving a problem that matters to them.
That's great advice.
Because what I've noticed is, like, you can't even imagine what you can do with it until everyone has a certain level of fluency. So, I think, make sure that no one's using proprietary data, make sure that they're not using personal data, but even before you pick a platform, that play with it for 10 to 12 hours, because on one hand, it shows you what it can do, but it also shows you what it can't do. And when people can see what it can and what it can't do, that's when they're really able to think, "Oh, I wonder if," and they start to see that. And then the other side effect of that I've noticed too is, that's when people who, really have deep domain knowledge, that's when they realize, "Oh, without me, this isn't as great. I have to ask, I'm the one asking the questions." They can't get to that until they have a certain level of fluency, and until enough people have a certain level of fluency that they can discuss together about what the right use cases are, then, everyone's not in a place for the imagination and the reimagination of what their work looks like.
Yeah, I think that's great coaching and feedback. Having kind of a baseline of fluency and knowledge, I think will make a huge difference in those conversations.
So we've talked a lot about what was smooth and easy. What sort of surprised you, or what challenges did you have to solve in this journey of raising the fluency inside of the company and getting everyone going in the same direction?
Yeah, I would say, going back to the governance and some of those constraints. I think we're still in there. We have an amazing legal team who keeps us out of trouble. And I was just talking to our head of recruiting, and she's like, "There's so many cool like AI interview tools out there that I am dying to use and get in here." But there's a lot of hoops that we have to go through with our legal team. And again, they're fighting the good fight for us and with us. So we appreciate that. So I think it's as we all, in every function are really trying to understand this technology, where can we push a little bit on those boundaries? Because ultimately, like in this case, it would be good to have an AI hiring tool that will help us, get more diverse candidates faster. So that is, worth the risk that, legal is bringing forward to us. So I think, kind of getting through some of those hurdles and having the kind of conversations we need to have, um, are some things that are in our way. I would say the other one is what we talked about a little bit, which is, um, getting people comfortable with experimenting, having them share about their own experiences and making time for learning. This has been the, never ending issue in my entire career. But we have something called deal hour, drop everything and learn, at least once a month. And so everybody kind of comes together and learns something. And we try to be more intentional about, hey, for this month, everybody is learning this. And so it goes back to that consistent language and, um, you know, community feeling of learning together. So I think making the time and really from a change leadership standpoint, reinforcing the fact that we have to learn AI because if we don't, we're going to be behind. We're not going to be as effective and we're not going to be as successful as a business.
That leads to a question that a lot of people in our audience are struggling with, which is how do you measure success? Like how does one measure success with different AI projects and initiatives? And something that you said at the top of our conversation was about sort of like your passion for scale. What we've seen and what's showing up in headlines and cases is that companies are doing pilots, but then they're really challenged at the point to turn those pilots into scale projects that they can measure. So, like, how do you think about measurement? What would be your advice?
Oh my gosh, that's always been a tough one, as you know, in the learning field, but especially with when it comes to AI. I think one of the things is just to understand um, what we're measuring. So, is it if it's productivity? How first of all, do we even have the tools to measure that? If we're trying to be 25% more productive, um, what are kind of indicators that we would be looking at to measure that? Or if we're trying to upskill or be more effective in strategic thinking, and we do fewer tasks that could be automated. Maybe one of the metrics is, we pick at least 4 tasks a quarter that we automate instead of kind of us doing it manually. And that could be like little things. Like we've now automated so little, but on Slack, a message on Mondays of, hey, what are your top 3 priorities to our teams? And on Fridays, share the one highlight that you had for the week that you learned. Again, just small kind of way to automate. But it gets people thinking, oh, okay, from within the AI context now, I can start thinking about some of the tasks that I'm doing that maybe could be automated more. So I think we're early stages. I don't think I answered your question exactly, but I think it goes back to that great question that you said before, which is what problem are we trying to solve? Um, what are ways that we can um, be more productive in our organization? What does success look like? So I think those need to be answered first before you can think about the measurement.
Excellent. So, very last question, and then we're at the end of our time. So, for an HR leader who's just getting started, like they're just getting started, what is the one or two things that you would say to them that they can take home?
I would say go out and whether it's learning on your computer or reading a book on AI, Ethan Malik is a great author and speaker on this. He has a great book, Co-Intelligence. There are a ton of articles out there. Just read as much as you possibly can, and I would say that's the first thing. Learning more about it, and then talking about it with your team. Having conversations about how should we be thinking about AI. What are you all doing? What are some of the experiments that maybe you don't even know your team is doing? So it can be as small as that, just starting to have those conversations. And that can open the door to other opportunities to talk about within your team.
Excellent. Thank you so, so very much. And that's it for this week's episode. A big thank you to Melissa for sharing her experience and insights with us. Before we wrap it up, I encourage you to follow the AI+HI project wherever you enjoy your podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to comment, leave a review. It really makes a difference. And finally, you can find all of our episodes at our website at shrm.org/AI+HI. Thanks for joining the conversation, and we'll see you next time.